Okay. Hello, I'm Dr. Keith Jantz. I'm a retired internist, speaking to you from our Speakers Bureau, connected with the Kansas City Medical Society Foundation. And we have a group of retired physicians in our bureau who are willing to talk to any organization in the public about various medical topics, and we're always happy to get the opportunity to speak with all of you. So I'm going to start out today by pointing out to everyone that you're not going to live as long as you used to. You're going to live 2 years less than you were going to live 2 years ago. The life expectancy of an individual in the United States has actually gone down by about 2 years, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But that's the reason why we need to pay attention to our own personal health, and that's part of the purpose of this talk. So what we're going to talk about today, I will initially talk about the top 10 things that you can do to continue to live longer. These are scientific studies that have been scientifically proven. These 10 things will help you to extend your lifespan. After that, I will list some additional information from what we call observational studies. These are not intense scientific studies, but they are observational studies that are probably also true. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. So if any of you have any questions, if you can please say them to the end, because we're on Zoom. So a few caveats that are important to remember about what we're going to talk about today. First of all, some of the information I'm going to give you is not necessarily going to be something that you can utilize, but it might be something that may be applicable to a family member or a friend or something like that. And so we would like you to pass that information along, because one of our missions is to try to inform the public about good health. And the more information that is out there from reliable sources, I think the more important it is. So the second caveat to keep in mind is, when it comes to our personal health, a little bit is good and sometimes a lot is bad. And you're going to hear this theme several times throughout the talk today, that a little bit of something is actually beneficial to our health, but a lot is not. I can recall years ago, my dad wanted to get the lawn to grow more, and so he put some fertilizer on it, and boy, the grass greened up and really looked great. So he thought, well, wow, this works pretty good. Let me put some more on. So of course, then he went out and put a whole bunch more fertilizer on. He ended up putting too much fertilizer on that burned the grass out. So it's a perfect example of a little bit is good, too much is not good. Another example of that with the human body has to do with water. Water is really important, and we all need water to stay healthy. But if we get too much water, like in the ocean, we'll drown. So water is good, but too much, not good at all. So then the third thing, that caveat that I want you to keep in mind is we all have to take control of our own personal health. If you're planning on relying on someone else to help manage your health, it's not going to happen. If you're going to plan on relying on the government, I think we've seen that doesn't work. COVID was a pretty good example that didn't work. If you're going to rely on the food industry or the pharmaceutical industry to try to keep you healthy, that isn't going to happen either, because all they're interested in is selling you product, and they don't really care whether it's going to be good for your health or bad for your health. So the other reason that this is important is preventative medicine is underemphasized in our country. Only 5% of every healthcare dollar is spent on preventative medicine. So what we're doing in our country is waiting until people get sick and then trying to fix the problem after they get sick. And the best way to stay healthy and live longer is to keep from getting sick in the first place. So prevention is really important. And then the fourth caveat that I want you to remember is that family history is extremely important. Take a look at what has happened to and what kind of health problems your ancestors have, your parents, maybe your siblings, or someone in your family, because you've probably inherited some of those genes which predispose you to some of the other kinds of diseases that has occurred in your family. So it's important to try to focus your efforts to maintain your physical health based on what genetically is likely to come in your direction. So let's move into the top 10 ways that you can live healthy. And hopefully you all have a list. I think Magda was going to try to send that around by email. So hope you all have one of these lists available to you. So we'll start with number 10, which is get an annual physical exam starting at age 35. I think this is really important because you should see a doctor or a healthcare provider at least once a year starting at age 35. And that individual should, or that provider should be checking you for three factors or risk factors that are most likely to cause heart disease, cardiovascular disease, strokes, and heart attacks. And these three things are high cholesterol, high blood sugar, or diabetes, and high blood pressure. Now, those things should be checked in the office as part of a physical. They should be doing what's called a lipid profile, where they look at LDL and HDL, good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and determine whether or not you have a problem there. And also, usually with a physical like that, a physician will order a chemistry profile, which will include a look at your glucose level. And if that glucose is slightly elevated, that provider might say, well, your blood sugar is up a little bit. Why don't you try to cut back on sweets in your diet and things like that? But don't let it go at that. If your blood sugar is elevated even a little bit on that chemistry profile, let's say maybe it's 120 or 125 instead of normal, like 105, ask your physician or provider to run a hemoglobin A1C. This is a simple blood test. It's called hemoglobin A1C. And what this test tells us is what your blood sugar has been doing for the last 3 months, all rolled into one number. So when you have that chemistry profile drawn, all that tells us is what your blood sugar was right at the minute that blood was drawn. This number tells us how your blood sugar has been doing before and after eating, before and after exercise, sleeping, awake, for the last 3 months, all rolled into one number. And if that number is elevated, it means you have diabetes. And you need to be treated for diabetes, either with diet or medication, or perhaps even with insulin if it's severe. So it's important to get screened for this, a very simple test. The other screening things that doctors should do as part of this physical would be to screen you for the most common cancers. That would be breast cancer, colon, lung, and prostate. And so it's important to schedule these screening tests if they're indicated or if you're at the age where that needs to be done. So for mammograms, if there's a positive family history, if you have a direct first order relative, a mother, sister, or daughter who has had breast cancer, then your risk is 1 in 6, and you should be getting a mammogram every year. If that's not the case and you don't have a family history, it is recommended that women get mammograms about every 2 years from age 40 to about age 75. That seems to be the age range where the most benefit comes from routine mammogram screening. For women over the age of 75, I think it's probably a smart thing to continue to get mammograms every 2 years if you're healthy and you really think that you're going to live for a long time. If you've reached age 75 and maybe you've got heart failure or emphysema or some other chronic diseases that are going to shorten your life, there may not be much benefit to that. But if you're an active, healthy person and you've been keeping good control of your health, I think, and there's a real possibility that you may live to another 10 or 20 years, and then at age 75, I think getting a mammogram is still a smart thing for a woman to do. Now, as far as colon cancer, same thing is really important. If there's a family history of that, if you had a first order relative that's had colon cancer and you haven't had a colonoscopy, you should have one done yesterday. Yes, that's right. You should get it done right away. Whenever a family member comes down with colon cancer, direct family members should have a colonoscopy in the near future because your risk is increased and you need to detect it early. Now, if that colonoscopy is negative, you may not need another colonoscopy for at least 10 years if it runs in your family. And if it doesn't run in your family, your gastroenterologist may tell you that you don't even need one at all in the rest of your lifetime. Now, some people, of course, they don't want a colonoscopy. They think it's a lot of trouble to go through. They don't want to do the prep, or they don't want to miss work and things like that. So there are some alternatives for that. One of them is Cologuard. Cologuard is a test. It's a DNA test that's done on your stool. It's a test that can be obtained at home. You don't have to do anything special for it. You don't have to miss any work or anything like that. And it's about 85% accurate in terms of determining whether a person has colon cancer or not. So that's a test that can be done. The problems with Cologuard, there are two problems. The first problem is if your Cologuard is positive, you're going to need a colonoscopy. So you're going to have to go do that anyway to try to find out why it's positive and whether you have either a polyp or colon cancer. The other problem with Cologuard is some insurance companies are currently not paying for it. It is a kit that you can do at home. It costs over $200, and if your insurance company is not paying for it, then you'll be paying for that out of your pocket. Whereas in general, most of the time, a colonoscopy is usually covered as a screening procedure. So the other common cancer that should be screened for is prostate cancer in men. And this is a controversial subject in medicine because a government agency a few years ago said that this test is not of any value and should not be done. I completely disagree with that. I think it certainly offers some value in terms of men determining whether they have prostate cancer or not. And it's certainly important in African Americans. In Black males, prostate cancer tends to be more severe, it tends to be more aggressive, and it tends to start earlier. So we do recommend starting at age 40 that Black males start getting the PSA blood test. And if it's elevated, there are things you can do. You can work with your doctor. Sometimes if it's elevated, it's a false positive. With PSA, if it's under 4, it usually means you don't have cancer. And if it's between 4 and 10, that's kind of in a gray zone. And if the PSA is over 10, then you very well may have cancer. But some things can be done for those false positives. You can take antibiotics for a couple of weeks and then retest it and see if it comes down. If it comes down to normal, then you know it's not cancer. So this is something you can work with your doctor. But that all comes along with making sure that you go in and see a provider or a doctor once a year for a checkup. And that was number 10. Number 9 is take 1 baby aspirin every day. About 20 or 25 years ago, this was a popular notion in the medical community, and I can tell you that back then, virtually every cardiologist in the entire country started taking a baby aspirin once a day. This is an 81 milligram aspirin. And we've done this for years. We've recommended this for years. Now, in the past 2 to 3 years, there has been a change in that recommendation, particularly for older people. It has been found that people over the age of 70, probably the downside of taking an aspirin every day was probably greater than whatever benefit they derived from protection from heart attacks, coronary artery disease, and strokes. So we're not generally recommending it for people over the age of 70. So who should take an aspirin every day? Well, women under the age of 50 who are perfectly healthy, and maybe say you're a woman under the age of 50 and you don't have any other problems. You don't smoke, you don't have any high blood pressure, you don't have any high cholesterol or anything like that, or you don't have diabetes. You don't need to take an aspirin a day. It's probably not going to be of any benefit to you. For the rest of us, somewhere between the age of 40 and 70, taking 1 baby aspirin a day is a smart thing to do. And certainly if you're at increased risk for heart attack or stroke in that age range, you would benefit from taking aspirin every day. Well, how do you know if you're really at increased risk for a heart attack? One of the easy ways to do that is to do a cardiovascular risk calculator. Now, this is pretty easy. You can just Google cardiovascular risk calculator, and it'll come up online, and it'll ask you some simple questions like what your age is and whether you smoke and whether you have diabetes and what your blood pressure is and what your cholesterol is. So you want to have those numbers handy when you access this little form. And then in a matter of a few seconds, it will tell you what your risk for a heart attack or stroke is in the next 10 years. And if it tells you that that risk is greater than 10%, then we definitely think that you should be taking an aspirin every day as a preventative measure. This is what we call primary prevention. This is solving the problem before it happens, not waiting until it happens. So 81 milligram aspirin every day for that age group. And it doesn't really matter. This is one of those things where more is not better, once again. So a 325 milligram regular adult aspirin will not offer you any additional benefits, and taking multiple aspirins per day, you actually lose whatever benefit that you could have from taking this 81 milligrams. So the smart thing is just 81 milligram aspirin. Get the generic. It's all the same, regardless of what you see or hear on TV. These things are all the same, so you might as well get the cheapest one. Enteric coated doesn't really matter. Some people think it protects the stomach. It really, several studies have shown that that doesn't really matter. So the cheapest aspirin you can find will work the best. So who should not take aspirin every day? Well, certainly people who are allergic to aspirin. There are some people who have a definite true allergy to aspirin. Those people should not be taking it. Also, if they have a bleeding tendency, if they have some other kind of blood disorder, they should not be taking aspirin. Also, maybe you've already had a heart attack, or maybe you've already had coronary artery disease, or had a angioplasty and a balloon put in and a stent put in, or you might have had a TIA or a stroke or something, and your doctor has put you on some kind of other blood thinner like Eliquis or Xarelto or one of those. In that instance, you should not be taking an aspirin because you're already taking something to thin your blood out. Now, if you're not sure about that, check with your doctor. You can just call and check and see if you should be taking it or not. So that's number 9. So number 8, use seat belts and don't speed. In the United States, there are close to 50,000 people who die from motor vehicle accidents every year. And about the motor vehicle studies have indicated to us that about 85% of those traffic deaths are caused by 4 separate factors: speeding, driving under the influence of either alcohol or other drugs, not wearing seat belts, or distracted driving, driving while using a cell phone. And interestingly, a more common cause of accidents than cell phone distraction is eating. People try to eat while they're driving and they take their eyes off the road. So about 85% of all the traffic deaths in the United States can be prevented by avoiding these 4 behaviors. So the seat belts are really important, and it's important because if you're in an automobile accident, we're all going to be at some time or other, and you're thrown out of a car, your risk for death, paralysis, or severe brain damage goes up dramatically if you're thrown out of the car as opposed to staying in the car. So that's one of the values of seat belts. So who are most likely not to wear seat belts? Well, teenagers, people who drive in rural settings, people who drive pickup trucks, men, and people riding in convertibles. And so for convertibles, you really want to be wearing seatbelts. So you got teenagers running around, driving around, having fun, not wanting to wear seatbelts. Try to encourage teenagers that to do that. So who's at highest risk? Well, the farmer who's driving his pickup truck out on a rural road without a seatbelt is more likely not to wear a seatbelt. So pretty important, simple things that we can do that will help keep us alive. And preventative measures. Again, we're trying to stay ahead of the problem before the problem actually occurs. Now, the other part of number 8 has to do with gun safety, and this isn't about gun control. This is about gun safety. I understand that people want to have guns, and that's their choice. But if you have a gun, keep it locked up, keep the ammunition locked up, and don't let kids play with guns. We hear every year about kids who pick up a gun that was laying on a coffee table or something, and it goes off, and the kid shoots his or her friend, another child. And so this is a real problem, and particularly in our part of the country. In the year 2022, the state of Missouri was 4th in the country in gunshot deaths. So there are some preventable things here. So there's nothing wrong with having a gun, but seriously try to practice some good gun safety habits so that we don't see any unnecessary deaths. So moving on, number 7 then, don't use tobacco. Yeah, there's no doubt in our minds that tobacco is a problem, and it doesn't matter how you ingest it, it's still a problem. We all know the cigarettes are bad for you. That's been out since 1964 when the Surgeon General first issued that statement. But when vaping came along, the tobacco companies tried to convince us that this was safe, and it's not. The nicotine still gets into your bloodstream and still affects your heart. It can still contribute to coronary artery disease and heart attacks. So vaping is not a safe way to ingest tobacco at all. Neither is chewing. For the same reason, some of the nicotine gets into your bloodstream and has deleterious effects on both your circulation to your heart and also the circulation to your brain, contributes to strokes and things like that. Of course, in addition to that, Chewing is associated with increased dental caries, cavities. If you talk to any dentist, they just shake their head if they have to deal with someone who chews tobacco regularly. So try to get off of it. We've got some great ways of stopping smoking if people are dependent on it. The nicotine patches, so we've got about a 20% success rate in getting people to quit tobacco using the nicotine patches. There's also a prescription medicine called Chantix, Chantix. This is by prescription from your doctor, and we've got about a 40% quit rate for people who are addicted to smoking and tobacco. So that's another possibility. So I tell people whatever way works. Some people have had some luck with hypnosis. Some people have had some luck with just quitting cold turkey. Whatever works for you is the best way to do it. So let's move on then to one other thing I wanted to mention to you about stopping smoking. I'll give you a story about a patient that I had who used to come into my office for a physical every year. And he was healthy, he was doing all the right things, except he continued to smoke. And every year I would tell him all the reasons why he should quit smoking and all the bad things about smoking. And every year he would come back, yeah, doc, I'm still smoking. And so one year he came in to see me for a physical, and he said, hey, doc, I quit smoking. And I go, really? What made you decide to quit? And he said, well, I was at work one day and a buddy of mine said, hey, you ought to quit those things, they'll kill you. And so I thought, well, I better quit. I thought, where was I in all of this? You listen to your buddy, but not to the doctor, but whatever. So there's a little lesson in that, and that has to do with the fact that if you have someone in your family that has maybe a bad health habit like smoking that you can't get them to quit, and you've been telling them to quit over and over again, and you're not getting anywhere, you probably should stop. I can tell you that I am amazed how many times through the years I saw people ignore perfectly good medical advice because it came from their spouse. And I think all of you have probably experienced some of this, or you know what I'm talking about. So if you've got someone like that who really needs to, say, quit smoking, but you can't get them to quit, try to employ a little different tactic other than telling them. Because if you just tell them over and over again, and you're living in the same household, it's just going to be a nag, and they're not going to like it. An older man who wouldn't quit smoking, but his grandchild says, "Well, I don't want to sit on Grandpa's lap because he smells like smoke." Boy, that'll get him to quit quicker than anything. So little tricks like that. If you've got someone who won't quit smoking, but they've got a friend or something like that, access that friend and say, "Hey, can you tell John to quit smoking? Break it to him gently, or tell him hard, or tell him he's an idiot to him." But sometimes coming from somebody else, that'll really work. So that's kind of an important thing. Moving on, number 6, drink 6 glasses of water per day. This is really important because our bodies run on water. About 89% of our bodies are water. Our cells function better if they have enough water in the system. So it is important to drink water. And the interesting value of that is a lot of us have experienced, maybe we get hungry late morning, like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, or maybe in the afternoon, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a couple hours away until mealtime, but you're hungry, and so you kind of reach for a snack. Well, one study found that people weren't actually hungry at that point, but they're actually mildly dehydrated. And then instead of reaching for a snack like a candy bar or some cookies or something like that, if you would just drink a glass or two of water, that would resolve the dehydration, the mild dehydration, and take care of the hunger sensation. So this is really important for people who are trying to lose weight, maybe people snack in between meals and are having trouble getting their weight down. It's one little technique that you can employ that will kind of help you tide yourself over until the next meal, so that you're not snacking. So drinking water is important for everyone, particularly for women. If your skin is well hydrated, it will have less wrinkles. I think all of you have seen these commercials for all kinds of moisturizing creams and things like that you can put topically on your skin. Well, guess what? You can hydrate your skin from inside out too, and that also works very nicely. So drinking plenty of water to help keep your skin well hydrated is really an important thing to do. And I don't recommend bottled water at all. And the reason for that is several. First of all, bottled water is not regulated by any industry. Nobody is evaluating your bottled water that you buy in the store as to whether it's pure or not or what impurities are in it. I know a few years ago in Perrier, they found benzene in Perrier. On the other hand, there are, on the average, in most communities, 23 different agencies that monitor the quality of water that's coming out of your tap. So in many ways, your tap water has been evaluated for purity more closely than bottled water. The other problem with bottled water is, of course, the plastic, and the plastic contributes immensely to the excessive plastic in our environment. So if you want to be environmentally conscious, you really should not be buying bottled water, at least not in a plastic container. So, and so one final thing about water is, 6 8-ounce glasses of water seems like a lot per day. You want to do that early in the day. You don't want to do that late in the day because then you'll be up all night going to the bathroom. You can't use coffee as a substitute for water because coffee actually is a mild diuretic and will actually contribute to some mild dehydration in your body if you consume excessive amounts of it. So don't substitute coffee for water. In this recommendation, stick with the water. That's what's going to help. So let's move on. Number 5, keep your weight down, keep your BMI under 26. Well, what is a BMI? Well, it stands for body mass index. And you can find out what your BMI is very easily. If you just Google BMI, you will get a bunch of different websites that you can go to, and they'll have a chart. And all you need to enter into the chart is your weight and your height, and it will give you a number. Now, if that number that it gives you is below 19, you're underweight and you're mildly malnourished, and you probably need to gain a little bit of weight. If that number is over 26, then you're overweight. And if that number is over 30, then you're obese. And if that number is over 35, then you are severely obese and you have some severe problems, either with metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes, probably high blood pressure, and certainly increasing your risk for heart attacks and strokes. So the ideal range here is 19 to 26. This is where you want your BMI to be. And so how do we get there? Well, a combination of a smart diet and some regular exercise, and we'll talk about exercise in a few minutes. A Mediterranean diet is a pretty nice diet. I'm not going to go into the details of a Mediterranean diet. You can look that up online and see what it amounts to. The nice thing about a Mediterranean diet, it's very healthy from the standpoint of heart disease. And also, several studies have shown that people on Mediterranean diets, even if they're diabetic, they actually do better on a Mediterranean diet than they do on a diabetic diet. So a Mediterranean diet's a good choice even for diabetics. So some other little tricks that you can do to try to help you lose weight. If you drink a glass of water, a full glass of water about 15 minutes before you sit down to eat a meal, you will eat less food at that meal. It's just a little way of tricking your body into eating less food. So don't eat quite so fast. People who are severely overweight tend to eat too rapidly. So try to chew your food and eat it a little bit more slowly. So the water before a meal, it works. Also, soup before a meal has the same effect. It tends to fill you up so that you'll eat less food and ingest less calories at that particular meal. I would recommend, if you're trying to lose weight, to stay away from diet soft drinks. There are certainly some studies that have shown that NutraSweet and some of these sweeteners, while they do not add any calories to the beverage, they tend to stimulate the appetite center in your brain and cause you to develop more appetite later on. So the net effect in the long term is that these diet beverages may actually contribute to some weight gain. So that's one more thing that you just want to stay away from. So let's move on to number 4. Eat 6 portions of fruits or vegetables every day. Certainly, most of us in America don't incorporate enough fruits and vegetables into our diet. We really try to emphasize people eating fruits that are high in potassium. There is an excellent study that showed that if you eat 6 portions of a high potassium food per day, you're less likely to suffer a stroke in your lifetime. So what are high potassium foods? Well, oranges, orange juice, bananas, kiwi, cantaloupe, honeydew melon, and baked potatoes are all high in potassium. And increase the vegetables. And also, it appears that if you eat fruit that's more ripe, it's probably more beneficial for you than fruit that's not quite as ripe. So number three, and four and three kind of go together. Number three, eat low-fat meat and fewer processed foods. So in terms of meat, we really recommend, we like to see people eat a lot of chicken, fish, and turkey. We think that that's healthier, particularly if it's turkey breast or chicken breast, because it tends to be lower in fat. But whatever kind of meat you eat, it should be baked or broiled or cooked on a barbecue grill. What we want to stay away from is fried foods of any kind, whether it's chicken or anything else. And the interesting thing is, barbecuing and grilling tends to really taste pretty good, and the fat drips away from the meat, so it's pretty healthy that way. Now, of course, when I recommend this to patients, of course, the first thing I get is, well, hey, doc, you just took away all of the good things that I like to eat. I really like to eat red meat and stuff like that. So what I tell people is, well, you don't have to totally abstain from red meat, but you have to be smart. Don't make it the number one source of meat protein in your diet. So some smart substitutes. If you want some pork, a pork chop is an excellent choice. It's low in fat, maybe almost as healthy for you as chicken thigh or a chicken drumstick. So from a cholesterol standpoint, so pork chop would be a good choice if you want to go with pork. And if you really want to go with beef, I would recommend a round steak. It tends to be a little bit lower in fat. And then if it's cooked on the grill or something like that, where the fat drips away, that's a healthy choice. If you decide, hey, I just got to have my beef fix, that's a good way to do it. Obviously you can realize here that I'm not recommending hamburgers. I'm not recommending processed meat at all. Generally, any kind of meat, if you go in a store, and any kind of meat that's been packaged has probably had some kind of processing done to it, and you need to read the label and see. And hamburgers are, of course, a problem because it tends to be high in fat compared with something like a round steak. So interesting thing when you go grocery shopping, if you the outside of the grocery store, if you go around the periphery of the grocery store, that's where the healthiest food is. And the inner part of a grocery store is where the least healthy food is. And so that's what you want to try to avoid. So another rule of thumb that I try to tell people about eating, if they try to figure out what to eat, I tell them, eat what God made, not what man made. Anytime you get some kind of a food product that's been altered by a man or a company or something like that, additives are put in. Some of these additives are not healthy for you. High fructose corn syrup is put in a lot of things now, and it's an absolutely terrible substance. It's been banned in Europe, in some countries in Europe, but for some reason it's in all kinds of foods here in the United States, and we really would like to see people avoid that. So the worst things are what we call ultra-processed foods. And studies have shown that people who consume ultra-processed foods on a regular basis are more likely to have a whole host of diseases, including coronary artery disease, strokes, obesity, depression, and decreased cognitive function. Now, here's a real wake up for you. If you want your brain to really think and function well, and you're eating ultra processed foods, you're actually making your brain so that it doesn't think as well. It doesn't solve problems as well. It doesn't come up with answers as well. It diminishes your cognitive function, leads you closer to dementia as you get older. So what are ultra processed foods? Well, this is where it gets kind of sticky because you don't like to hear this, but ultra processed foods, ice cream, potato chips, candy, sugary cereals are some of the worst. Hot dogs or any kind of processed meat, sausages, and things like that. These are all processed. Chemicals are put in these substances to try to preserve them. And you're just way better off eating fresh food. So fresh vegetables, either fresh or frozen, are fine as far as vegetables go. Fruit is better if it's fresh, or if fruit comes in a can, you want to look for fruit that's canned in its own juice. Any fruit that's canned in syrup is going to have sugar added to it, and that is a problem. And so meat in a butcher counter is going to be fresh. Unless it's bacon, it's going to be high in salt. But other than that, most of the other meats in a butcher counter are relatively fresh. Whereas meat that's in a package, be sure to pick up the package and look at it and see what's in it, because that will tell you. Did I say ice cream is processed? Yeah, I said it was ultra processed. Yeah, that's what you don't want to hear. So sorry about you, all you ice cream lovers, but there you go. If you eat a bowl of ice cream, it means your brain's not working as well as it could be. So moving on to number 2, get 6 to 8 hours of quality sleep every night. Each one of us needs a different amount of sleep, so you need to determine what amount of sleep works the best for you. But somewhere in the 6 to 8 hour range is the best. And what we're talking about is good quality sleep. So how do you get good quality sleep? Well, first of all, you need to make sure that the lights are really out. Not only just the lights overhead, but the blinds, so that there's no ambient light coming in from outside. And any little red lights or something, like maybe it's from your alarm clock or your TV or VCR, try to have those covered up. I always tell people if they have the little red letter numbers on their alarm clock, just turn the clock around backwards when you go to bed at night. Because some studies have actually shown that even though we are lying in bed with our eyes closed, that some of that light goes through our eyelids and hits our retina and stimulates our brain. So our brain doesn't get to rest the way it should. So try to just cover those up a little bit. Obviously, if there's some noise, try to shut that out. And if there are some health problems that are interfering with your sleep, try to correct those health problems. Now, obviously, snoring is a big one, and maybe it's not you that's snoring, or maybe it's your bed partner. And so try to deal with that. There are medical treatments for snoring, but the most inexpensive treatment for snoring is to sleep in a different room. Believe it or not, 40% of the couples in the United States actually sleep in separate bedrooms. Part of the reason for that is snoring, and that interrupts quality sleep for the non-snorer. So otherwise, if you're concerned that that might indicate a more serious problem like sleep apnea or something like that, you should see a sleep specialist and have that evaluated. Interestingly, there is a very slick way that you can be tested for that at home now with an overnight oximetry monitor. This is a test that's paid for by Medicare and insurance companies. You put a little red light on your finger and you sleep at night, and it records your oxygen level all night, and you take that in the next day, and the sleep specialist analyzes that and determines whether you've got a quality sleep problem or not. So that's another thing that can be done. Also, other medical problems that will interfere with sleep for men as they get older, they get BPH, or benign prostatic hypertrophy. And as a result of this, they tend to have to get up sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a night. This interrupts the sleep cycle, and that can be managed by your doctor or your urologist so that a person doesn't have to get up quite so often. So sleep is important. People who don't get regular sleep are more likely to incur a number of different medical problems, including depression, obesity, and chronic fatigue, as well as mental fatigue. So one of the reasons that sleep is important is during the day, while we are trying to solve problems, maybe you're at work fixing problems, maybe you're trying to solve problems at home, or you got kids that have issues that you have to deal with. So we're using our brain to do that, and our brain is really working hard during the day to take care of all these issues that come up. And so by the end of the day, your brain has accumulated some waste product, which is called glutamate. And this is accumulated in your brain, and that's why sleep is important, because during sleep, what your brain does and your body does is it removes that glutamate from your brain so that it gets rid of this waste byproduct of brain function. Well, if you don't get good sleep, then this just accumulates, and it won't happen in the first day, but over a period of time, chronic excessive accumulation of these kinds of chemicals in your brain will lead to fatigue, depression, sometimes increased appetite, which makes you want to eat more, and then you gain more, and then you have another health problem. So it's really important to try to get some good quality sleep. So let's move on to number 1. The number 1 thing that you can do at home to help yourself live longer is to exercise for 30 minutes every day. 30 minutes every day, or about 350 minutes per week. If you can't get it in 30 minutes in one day, try to make it up with 45 minutes the next day. And the exercise that we recommend the most is walking. It's a simple exercise. If you can go out and walk for 30 minutes every day, you will reduce your risk for a heart attack in your lifetime by 20%. 20%. Now, think about that. As doctors, we don't have any pill that we can prescribe for you that will just automatically reduce your risk for a heart attack in your lifetime by 20%. But walking for 30 minutes every day will do that. And here's the great thing about it. It doesn't cost anything. There's no pills to take, and there are no side effects. And another interesting benefit from that is it will help you lose weight. So if you're trying to lose weight, and let's say you don't do anything else, we talked about diet a few minutes ago, and let's say you don't do any of those things. Let's say you don't do anything to change everything that you do all day. But the one thing that you started doing differently is you're going out and walking for 30 minutes every day. You'll lose a half a pound a week. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but 25 pounds in a year, I think a lot of us would be happy with losing 25 pounds. So it's a simple thing. And how does it reduce your risk for heart attack? Well, a recent study has demonstrated that people who have a sedentary lifestyle, that is a risk factor for heart attacks that is about equivalent to smoking 1 pack of cigarettes per day. So we all sit here and think, wow, you're smoking a pack a day. That's going to give you a heart attack. So what's a sedentary lifestyle? You get up in the morning, maybe you get your kids off to school, maybe you got to go to work. The kind of work you do, you're primarily at a desk most of the time. At least you're not doing any heavy lifting or some manual labor. And then you get home in the afternoon, maybe relax a little bit, get the kids home from school, prepare dinner, sit down and eat dinner. After dinner, you either watch TV or read a book, and then you go to bed. That's a sedentary lifestyle. No physical activity in it to amount that's going to be of any benefit to your heart. So if you're living that kind of lifestyle, you need to incorporate some kind of physical activity. The walking 30 minutes a day is easy. You can do it most days of the year. Just put on a coat, walk out your front door. It only takes 30 minutes of your time. Another alternative is aerobic exercise, and some people really enjoy doing this. The nice thing about aerobic exercise is you don't need to do it as much. 20 to 25 minutes per session, 3 sessions per week is about all the aerobic exercise you need to do to offer some benefit for your heart. So what constitutes aerobic exercise? Well, jogging, swimming, bicycle, either stationary or real bicycle, Nordic track, handball, racquetball, jazzercise. That's it. Any other kind of exercise that you do is not in the aerobic category. It's still recreation. It's still a game. It's still something you can play and enjoy. But don't consider that exercise as being something that was probably beneficial to your heart. So that kind of eliminates golf and tennis and a lot of things that we like to do. And I'm not saying don't do those things. What I'm saying is if you practice those sports, don't expect that to necessarily benefit your heart. And that's kind of the top 10. And now I'm going to just go through very quickly, briefly, some observational studies that we have found through the years that indicate that you are likely to live longer. And these are kind of fun. And I don't have any hard scientific evidence that say that this works, but it's kind of fun. So what are the other things that you can do in your life that will help you live longer? Get a dog. People who have a dog live longer. Stay married. People who are married live longer than people who are divorced. Eat ripe fruit. I mentioned that before. Drink 1 cup of coffee per day. That decreases your risk for dementia as you get older. Take a vacation twice a year. If you're a working person, make sure you get that vacation in twice a year, even if you're retired. You would be wise to get out of town, so to speak. So if you are retired, it is important that you have a defined purpose or goal in life. We see many people in life who are just kind of drifting through retirement. They don't have any real purpose. Establish some goal. Either get a part-time job, a volunteer job. Maybe you want to help out some disenfranchised or disadvantaged people in the world. It increases your social interaction, which is going to help you to live longer. So what else can you do to live longer? Well, eat soup. We mentioned that before. See a female doctor. Interestingly, patients who have females for doctors live longer than patients who have males for doctors. I'm shooting myself in the foot when I say this, but it is a statistical fact. For men, increased frequency of sex. I'm not going to ask you how you're going to accomplish this, but it is true that men having more frequent sex are liable to live longer. Eat 85% dark chocolate. Dark chocolate, 1 ounce a day will increase your HDL or good cholesterol. If it's pure dark chocolate that does not have any sugar in it, this rules out candy bars and stuff like that. This kind of dark chocolate is the bitter kind, but that would help. Don't eat after 9 p.m. The later on you eat in the day, the more likely you are to put on those calories as weight. Use olive oil when you're cooking. Donate blood. People who donate blood are less likely to have a heart attack. The reason being that it lowers the amount of iron in their body and it lowers their risk for coronary artery disease. So donate blood. Not only you're helping your own personal health, but you're also contributing to the health of someone else who desperately needs the blood, and they are always in need of blood, I can tell you that. Floss your teeth every day. This sounds kind of crazy, but there is a direct connection between the amount of inflammation in the periodontal area and inflammation that causes coronary artery disease and heart attacks. Only 7% of people in the United States floss their teeth every day, but it has been shown to definitely reduce your risk for that. So we'll open it up for questions, and I see the chat box is really going crazy here. So let's try to kind of wander through that and see if anybody has any questions. Somebody asked about ice cream, and yeah, I'm sorry to say, what about deer meat? Well, again, deer meat probably depends on how it's prepared. I know buffalo has been advertised and touted for years as being lower in cholesterol than beef is. And and of course, deer meat or buffalo meat, if it's wild, then you're staying away from some of the antibiotics that some of these cattle processing companies give to their cattle before they're butchered. So deer meat is probably better than beef from that standpoint. But again, it's going to be how it's prepared. If you bake it or broil it, or if you grill it on a grill, that's going to be good. If you're going to fry it, that's going to be a problem. So we like to try to stay away from fried food. Okay, well, let's get to the ice creams. What about processed? What about plain vanilla? Well, if you really want to stay away from processed ice cream, but you want something like that, I can tell you that probably some kind of iced dessert would be better, like sherbet or something like that, especially if it's made out of fresh fruit. With ice cream, it's interesting when you get into French vanilla. There are eggs in that. I don't know how many eggs are in that, but okay. Next question, what about lifting weights? Lifting weights is interesting. That's an interesting concept. Certainly, as people get older, lifting small amounts of weights, it has been shown that it helps improve your balance and your muscle strength. This is important when people are retired, particularly older women who are retired. They tend to be more frail. Maybe they haven't done much physical activity or physical exercise. The reason it's beneficial is it reduces your tendency to fall. And of course, in older people, we know that falls lead to fractures, most notable hip fractures, which will tend to shorten a person's life, and in some instances will drive a person out of their house into a nursing home or into a retirement center. So there is some benefit there to lifting weights. For younger people, I don't think there's much value to it. It was oversold. If you go into a gym, some of these trainers will try to emphasize lifting weights or using machines. What I tell people is if you're younger, particularly if you're a male and you want to lift weights, I think you should only do it for 2 reasons. One, it makes your body look better, and you just want to look more muscular. It will do that, and there's no problem with that. Or two, maybe you compete in a competitive sport where you want to improve your performance. So certainly lifting weights will help you if you're playing football, golf, tennis, probably running. If you're doing this competitively and you're trying to beat the other person in the race, weights will have some benefit. But if you're lifting weights because you think it's going to help you to live longer, that's probably not really true, with the exception of elderly people who are frail and should be lifting weights. And again, those people were probably lifting very light weights, 1 or 2 pound dumbbells or something like that. You see some people when they're walking carrying a 1 pound dumbbell, which increases their strength in their upper arms. There's nothing wrong with this, and it certainly has been shown that people can live longer by doing that, but the mechanism is by either reducing the incidence of falls because it improves your balance, or by reducing the incidence of fractures if you do fall. So that's it for weights. And there's a question here about cats. Yeah, I don't know about cats. The thing that I read just talked about dogs. I can't tell you about cats. I don't have any information one way or another about cats. I think it certainly is probably beneficial for someone who's living alone to have an animal of some sort that they kind of relate to. I think there's probably some benefit for that. So any other questions that anybody else has? I'd be happy to field any questions either about what I talked about or really anything in medicine. I'm happy to answer any question as long as it's not about politics. So.
Well, you mentioned A1C. What were the limits for A1C?
Well, it differs with different labs. And so what you want to do is look at, and usually you want to be in the normal range. The normal range in most labs is usually either 5.6 or 5.9. Non-diabetics, their A1C will be anywhere in the 4 or 5 range, and that's fine. That's where it should be. Diabetics who are just mildly diabetic might be in the range of 6, 6.5, which means their control is pretty good, although it's not perfect. Diabetics who are very poorly controlled will have A1Cs upwards of 9 or 10, and occasionally we see undiagnosed diabetics who didn't know they had the disease, and they come into the hospital because they're extremely sick because they're decompensating with their diabetes. We will occasionally see A1Cs in the 11 or 12 range, and those people are really in trouble. They need good intensive medical care with either an internist or an endocrinologist, someone who's an expert in diabetes. But the goal is to get that number back in the normal range. Even for a diabetic, the ideal goal for a diabetic is to get that down in the normal range. And why is that a goal? It's because even if you're diabetic, if your A1C is down in that normal range, you have almost eliminated the chance that you will get a diabetic complication like retinopathy, which is eye damage, blindness, neuropathy, which is nerve damage in the feet, nephropathy, which is kidney damage. These are all potential complications of untreated or poorly managed diabetes. And if a diabetic can get their A1C down into that under 6 range, they generally have pretty much almost completely eliminated the risk for those complications. So that's the value of trying to get that under control. Is ice cream better for you if you make it yourself? Well, I guess that depends on what you put in it. Probably, because if you look at the label on the ice cream that you buy in the store and you look at the ingredients, and this is really true about anything you pick up. You know, if you pick up some kind of a TV dinner or pizza or whatever, take a look at the ingredients. You will be amazed at some of the chemicals that are put in there for whatever reason. Now, if you find some ice cream that is sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, that's really bad stuff, and you really want to stay away from that. So if you make the ice cream yourself, it would be a matter of what you put in it. Now, homemade ice cream depends on what kind of milk you're putting in it. Obviously, some skim milk is going to be better for you than whole milk, or how much cream you put in it. Sugar, You're going to want to put some sugar in homemade ice cream to make it taste better, but that's probably not as bad for you as high fructose corn syrup. So to answer your question, yeah, I think homemade ice cream is probably going to be better for you depending on what you put in it. And of course, if you want to flavor it with fruit, hopefully you're flavoring it with natural fruit, pureed fruit compote or something like that that you can create and then add the ice cream. I'm not a chef and I don't make ice cream at home, but I think there are some things you can do. So it all depends on what you put in it. But I'm sure that what you're putting in at home is probably going to be safer than what some food company is putting in the stuff that they're trying to sell you in the grocery store. So any other questions?
Well, I think that's about it. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Jantz, and I hope we will see you again. Thank you
Well, it was
so
my
much,
pleasure.
everyone.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with all of you, and take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. It's up to you, and I hope you're successful at it. So take care, everyone, and thank you, Magda. I really enjoyed it. We'll be glad to be back and hope to talk with you all again.
Thank you. Thank you.